This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, thanks for coming to today's SONiC test group meeting, and thanks for the presenter to carefully and meticulously prepare the materials. I will just give the host to the rest of time to our hosts, In and Maggie, to start driving the meeting. Yeah, Maggie, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Xin. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for you to take time to participate this subgroup of SONiC test meeting. So we will, this is, if you know, this is our meeting bridge you can dial into. The agenda for today is we are going to have three speakers. The first one will be Ian from Microsoft. He will take about half an hour to 45 minutes to talk about SONiC Test Framework 2.0, which is improved from involved from our first version of test framework. The second part will join talking by Microsoft Ian Xie and Broadcom Sastry, who will talk about the spy test from Broadcom, which we are going to be, we are thinking about to work together to contribute back to the community for test suite. Then from 12 to 1, we're going to have a lunch break. From 1, after that, 1 to 2, it's about Keysight Dean Lee, who will talk about some SONiC test report and contribution from the IXIA test report. So if you have like this one, at the time the afternoon talk started, we'll have a consensus from the audience, like who was in yesterday's meeting session. If everyone has been everyone has been listened to yesterday's talk, we will shorten this time period and we probably have a quick recap, and then we will start the open discussion. Or if we have less people still want to go through this talk again, and we can take another session of the talk. Lately, at last, we will have the open discussion for how the test community people consider the current SONiC test, what we are lacking of, what we want to improve, who want to contribute to which point, and where is the enhancement. But it's basically it's open discussion. We don't really preset any topic here. So with that said, let's start for the first speaker, Ian.
Thank you so much, Maggie.
Do I need to unshare?
You probably will be kicked out by me. I
Okay,
hope I'm
that's fine.
on the right screen now.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you everyone for joining this session, wherever you are. I'm sorry that we couldn't have a face-to-face today. Sorry, something.
Okay, no worry.
Okay. I'm really sorry that we couldn't have a face-to-face today, but we are all IT guys, so hopefully online is as good as face-to-face. With that, today I'm trying to talk about SONiC test. I'm going to present some of our visions from Microsoft perspective, what we want to lead this test group into, and what's the future of the SONiC test, etc. This means to be a solicitation of ideas and inputs, not just we saying that we want to go there and let's just go there. We want to have all the community members to get together, and we all define the vision, and we all set our path to our vision. With that, I think today I'm going to talk about 4 categories. First of all, I'm going to have a quick recap of what we have in today's SONiC test ecosystem, and talking about some challenges we already have, and some of the dreams I have, like shifting all the tests to the left side. I hope everyone knows about what that means. and some of the ideas that how do we lead this dream into our future. SONiC test right now is mainly getting to 4 categories at the moment. The very beginning forefront is a build test. So hopefully when you make a change, you will test it. Before you test, you will have to make a build. So when you make the SONiC installer image or making any of the subcomponent of the change that contains your change, those components usually have some tests involved, included, and while the building is running, the test is also running. When test fails, the build fails, so you will know immediately that something is broken, and you need to fix something and come back. And when test passes, then you can move on to the next step. Then you can create a PR. When you create a PR, there will be a slew of tests that get scheduled according to the component that you are changing. And so we have virtual switch tests and KVM virtual switch test scheduled. Once the PR passes, get approved and get merged, and we will move into the next stage. Next stage, we will have netly integration tests that run by various organizations. Like Microsoft will run netly test before we put the image into our production, I suppose. Our community friends will run the same thing, run similar tests before getting to the production. The PR tests is automatically scheduled. This is a snapshot of what we do for the build image repo. So we have 6 different categories of tests. So one of them is licensing, but the other 5 are real tests that we are running base image and 3 different platforms. Yeah, we actually have 6 tests. Yeah, so we have 3 different platforms today, and some plus a base image test. And on the left-hand side is a capture of pipeline of the test results that we are seeing. So basically, when you create a PR, we schedule those tests with Jenkins workers, and a whole bunch of Jenkins workers were created for this purpose. And particularly, we have about 16 to 17 virtual test beds to run for those PR tests. And those tests will be scheduled with those workers and will be executed once the test passes, and you can, the approver can look at the test results and plus review the code that you made, the change that has been made. And once test passes, then the merge can happen. Nightly test is a different beast that we run once we have image. That once we have a checking image, we cherry pick stuff, changes into feature branch. And the nightly test, unfortunately, we don't have a really good way of sharing the test suite right now. Maybe that's one of the things that we could do for the next step, that so that we can make the test suite also visible. So right now the test cases are visible from SONiC management repo, but how we organize the test cases together to run nightly tests is not something that easily can be shared today. Maybe that's a gap that we can fill tomorrow. So basically, from our Microsoft perspective, we run tests in multiple suites. The screen on the screen, I show 3 different categories. The first category is basically a topology-specific test, which is a part of our T0 tests, tour switch test suite. And in the middle is our warm reboot test suite. And on the left-hand side is upgrade path test suite. So each test is a special scenario, like warm reboot is testing particularly the warm reboot feature itself. And upgrade pathing is take the warm reboot and fast reboot into comeback scenarios that we actually upgrading from one version to another and make sure everything is fine afterwards. And of course, the T0 specific test is running things that specific to T0. And this is a timeline since we have official feature branches. First of our official feature branch is 2018-03 March branch, and then shortly after we created 2018-11 November branch, and now we are working actively on 2019-11 branch. And what happens is that we see that the rough stabilization time for 2018 March branch is around August timeframe, which is a rough, roughly. That number is roughly 6 months after the branch was created. And the same thing happens for 2018-11. Roughly 6 months later, the first stabilization signal was observed. And if we look at the checking history, and the interesting patterns start to show up as 2018-11 branch. So this diagram shows that how many commits was made for each month. So 2018-11 branch was created at the end of November 2018. And so I started counting how many commits go in starting from December 2018. And as you can see that there's an interesting trend that around June timeframe, our monthly checking count drops to below 20, around 20-ish. And at that time, I think we have a first stabilized image. And then what happens in July is that we actually introduce some new features into the branch, like the Everflow always on and Everflow with IPv6, etc. With those newly featured introduced, the monthly checking count went up to 61 again. And then it goes down over time. At the recent months, like the past February, we have 20 check-ins. So we have second signal of stabilization. It is very interesting. So it took us about 6 to 8 months to actually stabilize a branch, feature branch. So everyone can look at this. 6 to 8 months is not acceptable. It's obvious to everyone. But how can we make this better? Right? So is the question. If we don't change our practice, if we continue doing what we are doing, so we are just as good as we are, then we are not going to make this time shorter. But if everyone wants to have very short release cycles, then we have to do something to make something better, make something different. So, question for everyone: who thinks the master branch is stable? Anyways, master branch is stable between stable and unstable. It's mostly unstable, right? So we have regressions in master from time to time. And it was mostly okay, but not that stable. And every time we branch out from master, so far the history tells us that we take 6 to 8 months to stabilize it. How can we shorten this time? How can we roll out new features faster with confidence? So I think the answer is that we need to make sure that everything goes into the pipe itself is stable at the beginning. So we really want to shift lots of tests to the left-hand side. Right now, the left-hand side are mostly those PR tests, those virtual switch tests. And we need to really, really beef up those set of tests. We have about 200 tests right now, PR tests right now, but I think we need a lot more. And we also want to reshape our development behavior so that the validation and qualification is not always trailing behind the development. I want to have an impact on the development process itself and eventually get into the test-driven development scenarios. What I mean by that can be captured by a small example. So for instance, I have a function here. Apparently there's a bug in this function. Everyone can see that this is just really, really simple bug. But I can go there and just edit this function and fix the bug. But how can I make sure that no one else makes the same bug again in the future? Of course, this is a simple bug probably no one will ever make other than me. But how can I prevent anyone from regress this function? Instead of making a fix right away, I write a test. saying that, hey, this test must fail because I detect a bug. And I'm asserting that this function's result is going to be equal to 1 plus 2, which is not true right now. But fortunately, with the master fail flag that I'm putting in front of my test, the report will say, hey, this is passing right now, so that I don't contaminate the dashboard if we have a green dashboard so far. But at the same time, I have 100% reproduction of the bug. So the third step will be, okay, now I fix the bug. And at the same time, I either remove this must fail flag or put it as must pass flag, saying that, okay, right now this test must pass. So when commit like this comes in, it gives the reviewer a lot of confidence that, okay, I see a test 100% reproduce the problem. And now I see a fix and I see that the test must 100% passing right now. I have lots of confidence that this fix is at least 99% good. There might be coding style issues, there may be some other issues that we need to refactor the code, whatever. But in general, the code pass, the fix is going to be good. So if we change our development behavior into this behavior, then we can have more confidence that everything coming in from the left-hand side is going to be, if not 99%, maybe 90% good, then we'll be much better off. Then we probably can stabilize the branch in much shorter time. But only data will tell us in the future. So yes, as I said, I believe the road to the future is mostly lying on how do we improve our tests and how do we improve our test infrastructures so that we can make the test cases can be easily described and easily programmed. And another thing is that how do we make test results predictable, the test behavior predictable and repeatable. And of course, we need a lot of more test cases coming to our database, test case database. And we need to run more test cases in the PR tests. How do we achieve that? And we want to shorten the test case execution time. And we want to have the result published so that everyone can see. Right? From the community, everyone can see the test results. And eventually, if we can make the test so predictable, so fast, so scalable, then we might be able to do CI/CD. So there are some near-term works that already scheduled. Some already happened recently. So like the one of the changes that right now in PR is that we are improving the PR test wait mechanisms. So instead of in the virtual switch tests, that we identify some issue like lots of test cases was like sleeping 1 second, sleeping 2 seconds to wait until something to happen. Well, most of the time, you don't need that much time. Most of the time, it happens in 0.1 or 0.2 seconds. But from time to time, when the system is behaving differently, like the workers are really, really busy, the host is really, really busy, the host is doing paging, whatever, and you suddenly, one test case will fail. And because wait time 1 second is not enough. So the old reaction to those behaviors, okay, 1 second is not enough, let's wait for 2, let's wait for 3. So when we lead all those sleep 1 second, sleep 3 seconds over the place, eventually our test takes really, really long time to complete. So with that, actually Danny was making a really great change today, and the PR is up, everyone can take a look, that we are actually doing a small loop waiting. So we check if the expected change has already been made. And if it has been made, just return, otherwise continue waiting until certain expiration. So with that, we can say, okay, instead of waiting for 1 second, we can wait, how about wait 10 seconds instead? But because we're checking every 0.1 seconds, so 99% of the time, the result is coming in 0.1 seconds. But in those extreme cases when the system is busy, you can wait up to 10 seconds and test still passes. And some other changes that come from Microsoft, like we do the flaky thing, so that if the test cases was failed, we retry right away up to a few times, and if that passes, it passes because of this unpredictable behavior. So that's all those things are things that we want to improve, so that we have our test result really predictable and repeatable. So we're also trying to improve PR test stability. I know this is a pain point for lots of people. We constantly getting emails from community members, and a lot of community members are contributing a lot to stabilizing the PR tests. I really appreciate all those behaviors and all those efforts to make those tests more stable. But there's still a long way to go. We still need to improve a lot of the stability in the terms of stability. And so we have a SONiC. Most of our test cases are run in a SONiC management repo. So if the test regresses, it will have huge impact. But today we don't have PR tests running for SONiC management repo. So if we want to heavily shift all the tests to the left side, then the test has to hold up to certain quality as well. So we are thinking about making this create a PR test for SONiC management repo as well. So just quick some sanity tests, make sure that test case is doing whatever it's supposed to do, and of course not on the real hardware DUT. It's mostly on the virtual switch side, and make sure that those tests are sane before we merge the PR. And Tamer from Microsoft is working on multi-DUT deployment support as part of the SONiC testbed v2 work. SONiC testbed v2 is something that we're trying to define in the near future. We all know that currently our testbed is like 4 different testbeds: virtual switch, KVM switch, and DUT. Right, so three different, and then we are adding multi-DUT, so that's the fourth one. And so how do we improve our test deployments, and how do we improve our test case mobility? Basically, if you write one test case, the ultimate goal is that it can supposed to be able to run on any of those test beds, either virtual or non-virtual. And we have a high confidence that those test cases are getting expectable and identical results from any of those test beds. Of course, platform-specific test cases has to be run on hardware and has to be executed on the hardware. That is a given, that cannot be changed. But lots of other features, lots of high-level feature tests, we can actually do it with high confidence with virtual switch tests. Once we have that, then we can scale out our tests to different virtual platforms, different hardware and virtual platforms, and run in parallel. We can scale out, so that shorten our test case execution time a lot. And we want to embrace lots of newly introduced, I know that lots of community members has lots of great test infrastructures and test cases, and we want to embrace those community test cases and infrastructures and include them into our SONiC test infrastructure. That will be part of SONiC testbed v2. So lots of test cases, lots of community contributions. So from mid to longer term, we want to, of course, we want to encourage and embrace more community members to introduce more test infrastructure and test cases. And we want to actually, at the same time, we want to consolidate. I mean, just like I said earlier, we want to provide a common API for all the test cases, just so that we can easily migrate one test case from one platform to another. And we want to have a SONiC fan-out switch link state propagation support. That is also in the vision of supporting different test infrastructures running on the same set of test beds. So I don't know if I need to recapture this, but the community members are probably very familiar with SONiC testbed deployment today, topology today. We have DOT connect to fan-out switch, all ports connect to fan-out switch, and the fan-out switch connect to servers. Fan-out switch is a fabric itself, so it has 2 levels: leaf fan-out connect directly to DOT, and all leaf fan-outs connect to root fan-out, and the root fan-out goes to some IO generators like the PTF servers, Dockers, and with improved deployment with the fan-out switch link state propagation, we can right now the link is simulated by fan-out switch. The link physical link between DOTs. In terms of in the future, we have multiple DOT support and also the between the DOT and PDF Dockers. The link is simulated by the fan-out fabric, so it's not directly point-to-point. That's a major difference between the fan-out switch fabric and the cable. So like for instance, if I shut down one port and one DOT, the PTF doesn't necessarily know that the link is done. And if I have another DOT configured with this DOT, the other DOT won't be able to know that link went down on this port unless I have a link state propagation to actually shut down the fan-out switch connecting to the matching port on other DOT. So with that, with link propagation, we can use fabric more. We can use this fan-out fabric to simulate the cables more easily. It's almost like we have a layer 1 switch there. With that, we can tear down, reconfigure, and build up different test configurations with much more flexibility. And also, that's another topic that we are hoping that community members can contribute to ours, is that if we could have test coverage data presented to the wide audiences, like how many line of code has been covered by current tests. That comes in. I know that a lot of community members has already explored the options like GCOV. If you could upstream those configurations and data collections, data analysis, that would be great. And another thing that I don't know if it's easy to achieve is that I'm thinking that today there's lots of scenarios that I don't know if it's a pain point to lots of people, everyone, is that, for instance, if we make a change, complicated change, let's say that, we probably will touch different repos. For instance, if I want to touch SWSS repo and build image and utility repo at the same time, then the you have to manage those dependencies at the same time by yourself, right? Almost, and you cannot really test everything until you have everything in the repo one way or another. So I don't know if it's easily achievable, but if we could combine all those PR tests that cross repos, like say I want to say PRX in SWSS repo is Alliance PR with PRY in SONiC build image, and as well as SONiC PRZ in SONiC utility repo, and then we build image with sucking all those three changes together and run tests across based on having all three changes together. That will probably make lots of life easier for many folks. And things like if we really wanted to use, so because today lots of our tests is residing on in the SONiC management repo. So if I contribute a test case in SONiC management repo first, and I work on my feature in the SONiC build image repo, then I want to have a way to say these two PRs are linked together. When the feature is done, I have to flip my test cases to be must pass now, and these two PRs goes in hand together, right? So if they can be tested together, then that would be serving our purpose in the best way. So those are the things that I think what we have envision that we want to achieve in the future, mid to long term. We will probably work closely in the test subgroup in the future to actually define concrete milestones and action items to actually achieve those goals. And I can see that I need lots of help from the community in the future. That's pretty much all that I want to present to the community members in this topic. Do you guys have any questions, discussions? Comments?
There was a question in the chat. I hope to answer. So members, people are asking, what about the branch of 2019-04? Is that not active anymore? So when you present the branches roadmap, you missed one of 2019-04.
Yes, that's a good question. So that tool can only support 4 points, so I missed this branch. I was using a template to create that diagram. As for some reason, I haven't figured. I wasn't able to figure out the template to nicely to add more checkpoints. I actually want to add a few more checkpoints, but I couldn't.
Okay, cool. So is that branch is still active, or people are more focused on the new 2019 branch?
I think people are more focused actually working on 2019-11 branch right now. The 04 branch is actually not very active at this moment, I have to say.
Hi, this is Zhenghui from Juniper Networks. The question is asked by me. So the reason I'm asking is that even on the website, there is no build result for this branch. So I'm just asking that, and let alone all the test results.
That's a great question. That's one thing that we want to improve. Yes, so we want to make the test result, at least the virtual switch test result, published with the branch at a continuous basis, so that everyone can have a quick and easy visual into, is this branch stable?
In the virtual switch is running per PR, and the idea is that we are not merging anything that fails.
Exactly.
So why it's important? So why it's important to share if we know that the base is that everything is running and with no error.
That's a great question. Go ahead.
Because
sorry.
the assumption is that we don't push anything without VS running, and now we also have the VS image, which is also kind of an improved virtual test. So if the assumption is that we don't merge anything without the full success of all the candidate, all the CI, what we are looking for in the test results?
I think this is a great question. So we are not merging anything that is failing the test today. That's pretty much a common practice, and it's still the guideline. It's not going to change. Yes, so there is a test result published with every single PR. One thing that I think is missing there is that sometimes we have some interaction changes that comes in. They each individually pass the PR test, but eventually at the time when they merge together, they could have unexpected interaction towards each other. So it would be nice to have something like a nightly run of the branch, so that we publish those things so that we can probably catch things earlier. I don't have a concrete example, but that happened before.
No, I agree with you. So maybe we can, because the nightly builds, right?
Yeah.
They happen also in the Jenkins, and they are executed on, like, if there is a change or on a daily, right? So as a post, can we run the same test like we do in the PR?
I think that's the quickest way to achieve the goal of publishing branch tests. That's definitely a great idea.
Still, I think that in the future, we might want to have the functional test, not just the VS. But I think that in the short term, having VS and VS image running for each build, nightly build, then this is an option. And I think that the main problem that we have, that there are many functional tests which are running, and we don't have a way to share the results.
Can you define? Sorry, I think I understand what you're saying, but can you give me a little bit clarity of what you mean by the functional tests?
Yeah, the PyTest and the Ansible. Those are running on real hardware, right?
Yes. So sorry, someone else was saying something.
That's okay. Liat, you mean community tests, right? Like feature tests, right?
Yeah. Those are the defined as the VS. The virtual switch is not capable of running on hardware. We already talked about it. So I'm talking about all the bench of tests which are part of the community, and they are in SONiC management, and we are continuously adding more and converting from Ansible to PyTest. So for those, we don't have the ability to see the results. I think that in the past we also talked that we might want to have a cluster which is shared. So whenever there is a build, then we can also run the test on a nightly, and then people can see the result. But for that, we need to have all the equipment available. We need the storage. We need lab support and so on, because we all know that running those tests consumes a lot of time.
Yes. But yeah, so I think for that, I have to say that thank you very much for Mellanox folks for contributing so much in the PyTest infrastructure. I noticed that you guys did a whole bunch of great work lately. Adding all those plugins and the stuff is making things much easier and clearer. That's great work. And I think one opportunity I see from all those great work is that we, as I mentioned earlier, that we probably can further abstracting those APIs into some test APIs, high-level test APIs, abstracting away the differences between virtual testbed and hardware testbeds. So we have more confidence on test case migration from one platform to another. And with that, we can probably have opportunity of moving more test cases from hardware platform DUT side to the virtual side. And with that, we can publish more results easily over the nightly tests. I agree with you that having a shared cluster, shared test bed is kind of challenging. And one good question immediately come up from that is that how many test beds do we need to provide, right? So we have different platforms, and we have different, even from the same vendor, there's different platforms, let alone there's multiple vendors.
Hey, Yin, this is Shu from LinkedIn. Just a quick question. What exactly the problem to share those testbed results? Is like internet issues, or is like security issues? What exactly the problem?
What do you mean? Sorry, I didn't.
I mean, like you mentioned, like you cannot share the results for different platforms, right? You know, the hardware testing. What exactly is the reason? Right? I'm just trying to see whether we can open that up, right?
It's not. I will try to answer on behalf of Ying. It's not that he cannot share the results. The problem is that how do you share the result? How do you extract the result? Microsoft is not the only one who has all the equipment that is available, right?
So Jenkins, basically, when you run Jenkins, you will have like a result, right?
No, but Jenkins does not run. Only the internal Jenkins by vendors and by contributors runs the functional test, right? You don't have in the public Jenkins the functional tests. You only have the VS.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What's the problem to move that to public, right? Like, I understand
First,
you may have a like.
Jenkins is not a good platform for running tests, by the way.
Okay.
And we talked about that also in previous community meetings, that we need to find a different way which is scalable. And the pipeline that is currently used internally by Microsoft is not the same pipeline that's used by others. So sharing the information is not public, because this is not a public Jenkins.
Okay. Because
what
I know like
showed at the beginning is not a public Jenkins.
Okay.
How the pipeline looks like. And I can say for my behalf that I no longer use Jenkins for running the test, because it's kind of a lot of effort to extract the information and create many scripts on top of that. And when you want to add a test and the number of tests are just growing, this is not the way, the way to do that. So everyone has his own let's say automatic test infrastructure. It's not necessarily Jenkins. In the past, we thought about some kind of a robot or other options to run, but that didn't come as a community contributed. So sharing the functional test requires a lot of manual effort and scripts and so on, which is not part of the community.
Yeah, I understand like sharing the maybe all the steps. This is probably like you have some proprietary stuff, but the results can be shared, right? I mean, like on different platforms.
And
I mean,
there are like, let's take Mellanox for example. We have like dozens or even most setups.
I would say okay. Sorry for interruption, because we have a next talk starting in 1 minute, and I don't think this discussion can finish within 1 minute. Do you mind to bring these questions to the final open discussion? I think we should have lots of discussions at that time.
I don't know if
maybe
can stay
I don't have
that
a problem with that, but I'm not sure that I will be awake until then. But worst case, we can talk about it on the SONiC community meeting.
Okay, yeah, then in your judgment, because next talk is you and accessory, so should we extend?
That's okay. We can always push the lunch, but we cannot push people's bed schedule, right?
Okay, perfect. Sorry about for the interruption. Liat, please.
That's okay. Thanks, Maggie.
Yeah. Again, I just trying to understand the cause. I mean, otherwise we cannot help, right? I mean.
Yeah, lots of things that we can improve. I think, like how do we extract the report? So I think Liat is touch base a lot of good aspects, like the hardware and distribution running internally might not be the same as public SONiCs, community SONiCs, all those things. And another thing that the Jenkins test result is great, it's beautiful, but it will roll out over time, right? So how do we make those test cases more concise? Like maybe I have a few lines of one table of test results, and I can save somewhere, and I can format it in such a way that it's comparable from feature to feature, from feature branch to feature branch, and we can all compare against each other. So those things are not hard, but I mean it's work. We can schedule those work, and we can brainstorm how do we achieve that to make tests run faster, more predictable, more repeatable, and make the test result more presentable. And we can upload those test cases with the channel that we can define. And I'm all for sharing. I mean.
Okay.
I think Arkady mentioned something in the chat, and let's try to understand what is the status of 2019-11, which is called the release branch. We really don't know, right? We have no idea what is going on, what is failing or not. I can say, for example, that now it's that we do have many additional, let's call them test groups. We are opening a lot of issues in SONiC, but it just expressed that we do have, let's say, quality issue in the release, which is probably on the previous release as well. But the question of the question if, and it's not necessarily, by the way, it's not necessarily open as of regression, nightly regression, because of a different automation that happens, not the one. So I don't know how to share. I think that the sharing should be via GitHub issues. And the question is, are we opening GitHub issues for failures? And I don't think that we are doing that much.
Yeah, I think the problem you're pointing out that's valid, right? I think the challenge is that if we're not sharing the test and then not opening a GitHub issue, or everybody is testing the private version, then it doesn't and the test methodology is different, or test framework is different. I think all those kind of differences will hurt the community in the long run. I think that's yeah. And by the way, I think the 2019-11, I think we should kind of change our naming because this is really a release candidate, not a release branch. I think
Right.
before we hit the to production quality, we shouldn't call it a release branch. We should call it a release candidate. I think that's something that we should we're changing the naming.
I agree, but then when do we declare it as official? Because we don't do that, right? Right now, the release branch continues with bug fixes, which is great, and we see the changes coming in for bug fixes. But when or on top what is the criteria for making it production?
Yeah, I think we collectively should define a more clear way of when do we declare that in production. I think within Microsoft, we know that when do we roll out to production, but I think that's probably not the best criteria to be used across community because it's probably not applicable broad enough yet. So we should probably discuss that and a way to kind of define the standard. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all for a common standard. Like, so for instance, the observed symptom of stabilization, like, sorry, why my screen's not moving? The observed symptom of, not symptom, the sign of stabilization is more or less monthly checking drops below 20 at this moment.
That's a consequence of it. That's not a kind of a forward leading, right? This is a after signal. This is not an early pre-signal.
Exactly. So we analyze the after signal first and find why we lead to there, why take so long, and eventually we improve ourselves. That's a goal, I think.
So what is the typical bugs? I mean, we didn't capture in the test, or is that some new thing we found on the field? What is the typical bugs here?
Typical bugs, I think. Interoperability is a big thing.
Yeah. Okay. Then we need to improve our test beds, right, to do the interoperability tests.
Interoperability is definitely a big thing. Yes, we need to improve tests. So multi-DOT is in response to this challenge. Without multi-DOT, we cannot efficiently test interoperability.
I think improving the test is totally I think the only way to address it, right? That's probably I think that maybe we should move on to the next topic, which is about improving the test bed. If I got it right.
Yeah, let's do that.
So just before that, this is Zhenghui again from Juniper. Just before that, I think a lot of commits are adding new support for new platform or new model. So I probably need to carve those out of the real problem commits.
That's a good observation too. Yes, yeah. We do have people requesting adding new platform support. So it would probably be better if we carve out the whole platform definition to a different repo other than the image, and then we install that afterwards.
Yeah, maybe we should categorize all the commits into different repo.
Yeah, so this is just a very start. Like I did this last week to just prove a point. But yes, we could do lots of, with the history in the GitHub, we could do lots of analysis. I mean, today we have all the computer powers and brain powers. We need to find the best way of getting a branch stabilized faster.
And also a lot of things are backported, right? Okay, we found some issues on master, then we backport those.
Correct.
Branches.
Yeah. So yeah, so those are great questions. How we probably should spend more time to analyze. Once the branch is stabilized, we will go back and analyze what kind of bug fixes we need and why we missed them at the first place, and how do we improve our future work or test framework to catch those bugs earlier at the left-hand side.
And one suggestion, I think once we observe the stabilization of the branch, can we immediately make a tag on the in the branch so that people know that this tag is stable?
So that's a little challenge, right? I mean, without improving all the testing, how do we know like what is the standard to, what is the criteria?
How do you define stable? Yes.
Yeah, but in the presentation, I think we mentioned that in 6 to 8 months after the release branch is cut, we should have a point that declare the branch is stable and is ready for deployment, I think.
That is something that purely, well, okay, yeah. So that's empirical and not empirical. So that is depending on the test results that we observed in Microsoft. But doesn't necessarily mean that all the community members in different scenarios have different business cases will have the same level of stability. We could talk about this in the future. I think we could figure out something, but I don't have a clear picture how do we achieve that at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, that would create a problem for deployment in different companies' scenario. Like for other customers, they want to have a stabilized release, then it's very hard to give them.
I see. Okay, we need to figure out some indications and signals to the community. I think that's one of the things that we need to take into consideration for the next steps.
Yeah, Ying, I mean, at least like two signals, like software versus like platform or like ASIC stuff, right? So at least we can clear that software is good. Maybe a new addition to the ASIC or like platform related stuff. Maybe we can have more regression on top of that. So we should have a separate buckets, so kind of a different kind of test cases we can pick and choose for a metrics or like function to build a tag or something like that.
If the test bed has a good coverage.
We have only 1 hour left for the real meet for the test bed. We do have an open hour in the afternoon for questions. I would suggest that we move to that because many things will be more concrete.
Sure, yeah, thank you.
We all agree test needs to be improved. So I would have time for the technical part.
Okay, let's move on to the next topic and we continue our discussion. Sorry, Liat, I know it's too late for you.
Open question we can move to the end. We reserve time for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. Actually, next talk is still Ying and Sastry from Broadcom, so you guys can go ahead.
Thank you, Maggie. Come on. You guys see my sharing now?
Yes.
Am I sharing the right thing?
Yeah, can you move forward? We can see the next slides because this one is same for everything. So until we go to the next slide, we do not know. Okay, great. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So thanks everyone. This next presentation is done joint force by Broadcom and Microsoft. Broadcom came forth, observed that we have lots of testing coverage issues, and they came up with this great test framework, SONiC PyTest framework, in short as PyTest framework. So today we're going to have a quick introduction of this this framework and challenges that we overcome during the path of journey of bringing this into SONiC test ecosystem. So the agenda is forced into 4 categories today. Sorry, my bad. And I'm sorry. We're going to talk about the framework in general, and we have a quick demo of what PyTest could do. And we talk about some of the immediate next steps and stuff that will be a little bit longer term down the road. Come on. Yes, thank you. So the current test framework, as we talked about in the previous slides, we have virtual switch tests. The left hand side picture is not a great picture, but the one picture I find. And the right hand side, we have the physical DUT testbed with that we talk about in a little bit detail in the previous slides. That DUT is connected to fan-out fabrics and with servers and PTF drives I/O. That's the ecosystem we have today. And we are migrating lots of Ansible tests, as Mellanox talked about. Leah talked about it a little bit earlier, that we're migrating lots of Ansible tests to PyTest framework today. And now we have a new system, that new test infrastructure coming from contributed by Broadcom. Safri, do you want to take this slides?
Yeah, sure. Basically, like we looked at why do we need to come up with a different framework for the same problem, and then try to look at what kind of issues that we are facing and what do we wanted to achieve with respect to testing. So, couple of things. One is essentially we wanted to run on the physical devices, not just on the virtual devices, and we wanted to provide the same infrastructure for away from unit testing to all the way to system testing, right? So we looked at from that perspective, and then saw that in the current PyTest, in the current PTF environment, we were not able to do that. So we wanted to enhance that, and then like try to use not just the software traffic generator, but also for using the off-the-shelf traffic generators like Ixia or Spirent, right? So, and apart from that, we really wanted to test with existing other NOS systems, existing systems, so that we are not doing something very specific to our own system, right? So that's a motivation, and then we did come up with like the changes that brings all the needed enhancements on top of PyTest environment, and then developed scripts with using the PyTest, right? So, and we wanted to bring all those test scripts that are available, that are used locally inside the Broadcom. We wanted to bring all of them back into the community, right? So, and the first and foremost bottleneck, that the challenge that we kind of faced is lack of support for the third-party traffic generators, right? So the scripts that are written for Ixia or Spirent are not directly available in a PTF environment, which is used by many community members. So we just wanted to bridge the gap and provide the like a southbound for the traffic generator, southbound for the HLT APIs, that is a SCAPI southbound for the HLT APIs, at least as far as the stateless traffic is concerned. And as a NOS, we have like extensive expertise in terms of how we can emulate the protocols, and there are a lot of open source projects that are available there, which can be used for the protocol emulation, right? Be it Quagga, be it FRR, or like something like XRBGP or things like that. So that can be used for the protocol emulation. For example, we just wanted to bring up the BGP neighborship. We should be able to just use XRBGP very easily in the PTF environment. We don't necessarily have to use a third-party traffic generator, but the test cases that are written for the third-party traffic generators, if we can bridge the gap using this open source protocol emulations. We are actually like getting getting the best of both the worlds, right? So that's precisely the motivation and some of the challenges that we faced, and we try to look at with respect to how much of traffic generation capabilities that we need to add, right? And obviously, it's a big ocean, right? So we went with an approach of what does it take to run the existing test scripts in a PTF environment, and we are happy to say that we're almost there, and there will be issues sometime or the other, but all the loose ends are covered at this point of time, and we are ready for pushing the changes into the community. Over to you, Ing.
Next slide.
Yep. So just to give some more internals of what we are trying to do with spy test on top of PTF integration, PTF, right? Spy test is essentially written with the XIA and Spirent in mind. Now, to be able to contribute the same test cases back to the community, we wanted to integrate that on top of existing test bed or modified community test bed. That's a PTF test bed, right? So this is what we came up with. This is a simplified version to expand to present the details, internal details. The PTF Docker is exactly going to be same as the existing PTF Docker, except that there is a service that is added into that, right? I'm just calling that as a SCAPI service, which essentially emulates the HLT API and then convert the HLT APIs into the SCAPI calls and then drive the IO from there, right? So and then like the existing Ansible test cases are actually running in SONiC MGMT Docker, which will be used which will also be used for the spy test. So the spy test is going to be yet another package inside the SONiC MGMT Docker, right? And there are two ways of the connections between the devices is through the fan out switches. For the simplicity of the diagram, I just presented a single fan out switch there, but the same thing will work for the root as well as a leaf fan out switch, right? So in a real in an environment where somebody wanted to use the physical traffic generator, only this left side block of the server, basically a PTF server, will not be available. And in case of PTF environment, the server will take the HLT APIs and then convert them back into SCAPI. So this is what I see as this has been tested at least with the sample test scripts, and it is working fine, and we are ready to push them into the community.
Thank you, Sasri. So you guys probably.
Can I ask a question before we move? Can you go back to the previous slide? So maybe I'm not in the details, but I'm trying to understand what is the spy test is different from the test that we are running right now, beside of the how many ports that we are using and so on. What is the benefit of that, or are we going to use the same PyTest that we currently have, but just have it as a wrapper, or whatever we have right now is different from that point?
There is a slide in the backups that actually details, and we did talk about spy test in multiple community meetings in depth, and then gave presentations also, where it brings the ecosystem that is needed. For example, for example, how do I ensure that my runs are always will they don't stop, and they will, how do I recover it in error conditions and then proceed further? Do I have my remote power supply, in cases where the DUT is stuck, can I go ahead and then restart them and proceed further, right? And is it possible to access through the telnet or SSH kind of thing, or can I execute the test in parallel across the devices? And how do I start loading the images at the beginning, and then restore it back with the golden image at the end? And how do I do the port breakout, and what kind of what do you call the data that I need to collect in case of a failure? For example, is codump is good enough, or is syslog is good enough, or is redis dump is good enough? And do I need to run this all? Do I need to collect all this information always, or only on the fail conditions? And all these the ecosystem that is needed for so that the test scripts don't need to worry about all these things, but they just stick to what need to be done for the future, right? So all that is being packaged on top of PyTest, and which essentially offloads or simplifies the test script development, and but still being the central part, and then try to collect all the information that is crucial for the development team to identify the issues and then fix the issues, right? So go ahead.
Does it mean that we can keep the current, let's say, testbed configuration, and then use the same test, and only we need to wrap them? Because you are showing here a different view of what we currently have. So what is the migration steps in order to have it?
Yeah, so I think I touched base a little bit on the previous presentation, but not in a clear way. Now we have a concrete example. It's a better way to describe. So let's say that if you treat this leaf file in the middle as a leaf fabric, that's probably the better presentation of what we have today and tomorrow, anyways. And the DUT, the two DUTs on the right hand side, AS73 and 78, blah blah, they are two different DUTs in our current way of running tests. We probably take one of these two DUTs, build a system, and having some virtual switches on the server, which is also hosting this PTF Docker, to talk to the DUT and run our test cases. And the other DUT will run another set of test cases. But when it's needed, we could tear down these two DUTs and redeploy a spy test infrastructure. Redeploy a spy test testbed with both DUTs in place. So with multiple DUTs in place, then we can run the set of spy test cases. I think the great way of capturing the future is like Sastry said in the previous slides, get the best of both worlds. So right now the spy test has a strong suite on multi-DUT testing.
Yeah, just to add to that, it is just not the what do you call multi-DUT testing. There is in every test framework there will be some things that are different from the other test framework, right? And because the focus is probably is going to be different in multiple tests, right? Like in case of the existing PTF test scripts, as Inc has mentioned, the idea has always been let me just test the device and the test in various roles, be it as a tar or be it as a spine or leaf, and then trying to always assume that the partner is a VM and at a very low traffic rate. There's some stateless traffic is also being sent. Whereas in case of we really wanted to test how it behaves with the SONiC itself, SONiC device with the SONiC itself. Right now, that's not something that we are doing. But whereas if you bring two physical test beds and then try to collect them, try to connect them, you are actually getting much closer to the real world scenario where it's mostly the physical devices which talk to each other, and all of them, they could be different variants, or there could be a different NOS itself, different speeds, and all these things, right? So the focus is a little bit different from probably the existing test scripts, but this is also much more needed to solidify SONiC as a great NOS.
But to Leah's point, I mean, once PyTest is in the mix, what happens to the existing PyTest and Ansible test cases? The answer is we don't have to do anything on them, right? They're still going to run.
Yeah.
The PyTest just adds an alternate way running on the same test bed of doing richer test cases.
Right.
Yeah, and this is Ding Li from Keysight. Just my understanding of what you just described here, yes, you're going to improve these multi-dot scenario, right? Make it more realistic interoperability. But I think you also mentioned it looks like some additional upgrade to the traffic generator, right? You want to be able to bring in hardware-based test system like XCL or Spirent. So sounds like that will significantly increase in the area of performance and resilience test cases. My question is how, I think you mentioned HLT API. I mean, that's a common API you could interface with various traffic generator. I mean, how are you going to integrate with this spy test? What is the, not kind of clear here on this diagram, how does that fit in? I'm just curious.
Yeah, basically, as you know, like Ixia and Spirent, they kind of have a common. There's an open specification for how the traffic generator calls should look like. Right, there is some difference, but more or less. All the traffic generators will work in the same way once we start using the what do you call HLT API. So underneath, as I see, or at least as I'm aware of, there are two implementations that are available. One for one by Ixia and one and another with Spirent STC, right? And what are they doing? Like at the end of the day, mostly it is going to be configuring a stream and then defining some kind of a control for how do we control the stream and all these things, right? And in SCAPI world, we do have a mechanism to create the packets, and it is left to the user on how to control the streams. Like, is it incrementing MAC address or incrementing IP address, or at what rate I need to send, and all these things, right? Like, this is a kind of a metadata on top of the packet structure, right? So so it is possible. It is probably not natively possible with the SCAPI, but at the end of the day, it's just a Python, right? We can just write on top of SCAPI all that scaffolding that is needed to mimic to understand this metadata and then accordingly generate the packets. In any case, a PDF environment, as we are using SCAPI, we know that it is definitely not for the line rate traffic, but it's only for very small rate, right? So the same test case, if it is working with Ixia that can be used at a much higher rate, and whereas in the same test case, if it is working with a with the PTF environment, this will be used at a much smaller rate, right?
But Sastry, that means that a single test case, whether it's running in Ixia or it's running in SCAPI, it can run in both, right? And you don't have to modify the test case.
That's right. That's the goal. That's right.
And Dean, for your information, all the test cases that Broadcom plans to contribute, they all run on Ixia today in our labs. And we're basically doing all of this SCAPI work using HLT API so that we can easily port them between the two environments.
Right. So it's a SCAPI frame definitions, but the underlay traffic generator, it could be software or it could be a hardware-based traffic gen. So that basically that's what I am hearing here. Correct?
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Makes sense.
Yeah, thanks everyone. So it's more or less effort of combining not just both grid of both, but combine grid of all words that everyone trying to contribute into this SONiC test infrastructure ecosystem. So with this bytest, we're introducing the capability of running multi-DUT and driving traffic from IO generating from the real hardware generator. But again, I want to emphasize that we also want to combine more good things into this system, and so that we can more abstract the API, test APIs away, so that we can run test cases with high fidelity on different platforms, virtual versus hardware. Hardware is inevitable. We have to run certain test cases on hardware. That's no doubt about it. Yeah, but the quickest way of getting more test cases moved to left-hand side is so that we abstract them away, so that they run on top of common APIs, so they can run on any environment. So in that case, I don't think we are rejecting any infrastructure platform. We are trying to embrace everything together to make everything better together. So anyway, so that's a great discussion. Thank you very much, Sastry, Michael, and Ben, and everyone else.
Sorry, am I audible? I have a quick question actually. I put it up on the chat because I was having mic issues.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm Shubha from Nokia. In the testbed.csv file in SONiC management today, you have the ability to point to a specific PTF image. Now, if I want to spin up multiple tools, right, maybe a Ixia VM or a PTF, would you have the ability to support multiple images with all these changes?
Multiple images, what do you mean by multiple images?
Docker images. Like today we point to a Docker image, right, for PTF.
Oh yes, of course. We actually, I don't know if there are good examples in the test bed already. I think there are PTF tests and yeah, I think we have at least 2 flavors. Let me just get the name right.
Again, like there are 2 options, right? Like one, if we really wanted to, why would someone use a different PTF image, right? Because there is some change that someone wanted to bring into the PTF image, right? So
no, I don't necessarily mean 2 PTF images. I mean maybe an in-house tool or 2 different traffic generators. 2 different Dockers running 2 different traffic tools, for example.
I think if you are talking about the hardware L generator side, I think Sastry can correct me. I think they are both supported by this PTF spy test Docker.
Let me just add that. So if we are talking about some test scripts you wanted to run with let's say Ixia, and some test cases that you wanted to run with a PTF, right?
Exactly.
The Docker is needed only when you are talking about a PTF, right? And if you are talking about testing with the Ixia ports or the Spirent, the Ixia Spirent ports will be connected to Leaf somehow, somewhere, right? And then once you get this multi-DUT support, it is basically, it's not multi-DUT support, it's multiple physical devices support, right? And the traffic generator also falls under the same umbrella, right? So there will be like a virtual connection between the Ixia, the traffic generator port to the device, right? So that can be used for and then like there is no Ixia or Spirent VM that is running in the server, because that's a physical device that we are talking about, right? So that gets directly connected to the Leaf.
Yeah. So yeah, the test encapsulation for the IO driving for that case, sorry, thank you, Sashri, to correct me, is inside the other Docker, the SONiC management Docker, SpyTest Docker, instead of this PTF Docker. PTF Docker is for IO generating when we are running PTF against SpyTest.
Okay. Fine. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. Thank you very much. So talking about the environment, sorry, moving please. Yes, thank you. So we actually spent a week last week at Microsoft Office. We kind of sit together almost daily and scratch our head together. When Sasha said, "Hey, I can just run this test in my environment, no problem. Why can't you run it?" Right? So what we're trying to capture the past experience of the past week. We actually had a great work relationship, and we actually overcome a whole bunch of issues. And by the end of the last week, we captured things that will make community members' life much easier. Things that actually have his muscle memory to remember, and his environment, he just forget about the details that. But thankful to Sashi, he provided lots of good information so that we can get to this point where we actually defined a SpyTest Docker, PTF SpyTest Docker, and PTF, sorry, and SONiC management SpyTest Docker. So with these two Dockers, we're going to run the test in very similar fashion today. When we load up SONiC management SpyTest Docker, we have all the bells and whistles in there to kick off SpyTest. And when we deploy the testbed with PTF SpyTest Docker, then we have all the IO generating and all the things that come up from Sasri and Broadcom. That to drive IO and talking to the HLD API, that kind of thing. So everything is captured in those Dockers. So once you have these two Dockers, you can run test. Of course, you have to have physical test bed, and you can pretty much run those tests. So this covers the environment and the execution facilities. And we also look at the test results, and the test result is presented in a pretty nice way. We can give a quick demo of this test system. So like what I said earlier, that so we have descriptions of, let's say, this test bed we're going to deploy for test SpyTest. And then what we do is that we specify that we want to use PTF SpyTest Docker. I know highlighting probably makes you reading harder, so that's why I'm highlighting and then cancel it right away. And then we describe this system, and we deploy it. And once we deploy it, we make sure that we have a SpyTest Docker that is running, and we can run the test just like so. And what this test does is that it's actually connecting to the described test DUTs, which we're running 2 out of 4 DUT right now. We actually built a system with 4 DUTs, but we are starting with 2 at the beginning. And what this test does is it actually connect to the test bed and try to configure the test from scratch, configure the DUTs from the scratch with knowledge of where the cables go and which port connects to which cable in what fashion. And with those information, it actually kick off the test. I don't know if we want to actually wait for the test to complete, but just give you an example of test results. This is a Broadcom test result that's actually provided. And for this piloting project and this infrastructure test out project, we each tried 5 test cases. He tried on Broadcom infrastructure, I tried on Microsoft infrastructure. All 5 test cases passed. I apologize for the different ordering of those test cases. Those test cases, the results are ordered by the execution time here. And it's not ordered by alphabetic order. It would be nice if it, sorry about that. But anyways, the point that we both have 5 test case passes, so on both Broadcom and Microsoft infrastructure. So that is the fidelity of this test environment is going to be good enough for future community member consumption. And with that, I think the immediate next steps, we already have SONiC management spy test Docker PR up and in the SONiC management repo. In the SONiC build image repo. The plan for this is actually this difference is very small, but we still capture it out as SONiC management spy test Docker for the time being. But the plan is that once we have this Docker built by official build and we test it out in our nightly test bed and make sure that this Docker is good enough for both nightly test, spy test, and the PyTest. Then at that point, we'll merge this back into a single SONiC management Docker. But that's next step. And we also have a PTF spy test Docker defined, but waiting for some green lights from Broadcom to get it uploaded upstream to SONiC community. Yeah, so with the green lights from the Broadcom, then the initial test cases, at least 5 of them, and the framework will be coming to the community, and everyone can have a taste of what is capable and what can lead to how to really run this test. So down the road, I think we want to have more test cases from once we have this test bed and infrastructure accepted by the community and tried out by the community. We want to have more community members to contribute test cases on top of this infrastructure. And we want to, as I said many times today already, we want to generalize the framework to support the various test beds, and so that both test cases can contribute into the test case database and run as appropriate in different platforms. And also, we touch base a little bit about how do we change the DRM model towards the Shashi, do you want to take this?
Sure. Basically, like we wanted to see going forward how to get the PRs based on the test results. So obviously, this means that somehow we need to map the test suits to different feature sets, and then it's kind of like CI/CD in one way, or even if it is offline, like we should be able to just present the results for different suits, so that we have a fair confidence that we are not introducing any regressions or any other issues, and so that's one of the challenge that we need to address at some point of time. And the other this one is we wanted to see how to run both on the physical and virtual topologies, and even maybe across the community member test bed, because maybe it's not always practical to have all the variants of the systems in one location, right? So maybe there is a different variants that are available across the community members, and we need to see, or we need to come up with some means of making sure that we have a coverage across different SKUs and different maybe different switch vendors, or maybe different SKUs. And obviously the fundamental step, or the very important step of testing with the other devices, and also with the SONiC itself, physical, with the SONiC physical devices itself, as well as with the other vendors. So this from the the SPI-test does provide the capability to connect it to a different type of different NOSes, but since we are trying to test the SONiC, I was looking at does it really make sense to limit the amount of support that we need to test the other devices. For example, maybe a configuration ability to load a configuration and then triggers somewhere or the other, or even better, like use SNMP for the triggers, and then like use the load config for the configuration, things like that. Or if they already provide some kind of Ansible support, things like that, which can be common across the devices that we are going to use it for the interrupt, non-SONiC devices that we are going to use for the interrupt, right? So that's something that we need to look at and then take a call on how to or which method to use it. Right. This one, I think, that's based on some of the points here, is basically like how do we segregate the test scripts, right? Like maybe based on let's say platform specific test scripts, or feature specific test scripts, or even stress test cases, or in some cases we probably even need a different set of test cases which will check for dynamic memory analysis, maybe Valgrind or address sanitizer, things like that, right? So there will always be a buckets of tests, and as a community, it's better to it's a shared responsibility to segregate them into different buckets, and so that we don't have to run the entire suite to be verifying a small PR, especially for gating purpose, right? So that's something that we need to do. And as I said, like the southbound, the HLD API support for the SCAPI is definitely not going to be 100%, because HLD API itself is so vast, right? But it on need basis, we should be able to just go on and add it, right? Because at the end of the day, it's just a layer on top of SCAPI, right? So we should be able to go on and contribute different streams or different methods in that area. And I kind of see, is there any, like, once we have the large number of test cases running, and we probably need to look at the patterns by which we can create the defects automatically based on the test results. It's a long shot, but I think that at the end of the day, we need some mechanism to mine the test results and then take action appropriately. And that mining, as long as we make that as automated, I think it will go a long way. So that's what I was thinking, and down the road, like, we should be looking at.
Great, thanks, Asri. That's pretty much all that we have prepared today. So as we talk about, we are waiting for green lights from Broadcom to get the initial infrastructure into the SONiC management repo. So those green lights are non-technical. So everyone understands. Big company with legal department always complicated. But we hope to solve that issue soonish. And so the test demo is still running. So with that, so Sasha, do you have a commitment that Broadcom wants to present to the community as in terms of at what velocity and what time frame that you guys are uploading the existing test cases into the SONiC management repo?
Yeah, I was actually looking at the very bare minimum. We should be looking at least by every week. We wanted to go on and start contributing back at least till all these test cases are completed at that velocity, and probably something like a 50 scenarios per week is a decent goal. And again, like it all goes by the priorities and all these things, but that's what I have in my mind at this point of time.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Broadcom is motivated and the community to contribute all the test cases into the SONiC management repo so that to share with the whole community. So that's very good. Thank you very much, Sasri and Michael and Ben. With that, any questions, comments?
Shin, I have one question. This is Dean. So these test cases, are these the existing test cases or something new? Broadcom will add to the test bed. I just a little bit confused. Well, these are the existing test cases and migrate to the SPY test. Is that what you're talking about?
No.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike.
Dean, these are test cases we've created at Broadcom that exist today, right? And they're running on SPY test on our own in our own test beds. And what Sauster's been doing is getting those test cases to work on just a standard community build in the PTF test beds. So really think of it as we have a vast, thousands of test cases that we're making sure we validate SONiC every single day on. And what we want to do is bring that suite to the community in an environment that the community is able to run it. And that's really what the effort is. It's not creating new ones right now, though we're always creating new ones. It's really saying we've already created a huge inventory. We want to get that inventory to the community.
Okay, got it. All right.
Thanks, Michael. Lots of passion there. Yes, so great. So I think that's twofold. One side is that Broadcom is so passionate to contribute and give everything they have to the community. Another side is that the community also could respond with contributing more test cases should this infrastructure make available to the whole community, right? So it's
absolutely correct, right? That is the idea. It's not just, hey, the goal is we give another framework that works well with PTF, that brings these systems together, that all users have a choice. So they can leverage what we've developed, but they can also develop more and enhance those libraries and give feedback on what would improve it even better so a bigger community can use it faster. You talked a lot about, Yang, about having more test cases, moving it to the left. We agree with that. And what we're trying to do is help actually bring that to fruition through this inventory that we've got.
Absolutely. I totally appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I'm glad to hear that because this also will have a great tie-in to the test methodology. I'm going to present this afternoon. I did that presentation yesterday. Probably most of you have seen it. I think with the flexibility you're creating here, that will enable us to contribute to some of the test cases that might be more effective or relevant using a hardware-based traffic generator. So I mean, those were going to be the area we could contribute, and previously I was not really clear how we could tie in with the SONiC testbed, but seems like with the spy test that will be give us more option to tie in and contribute. So that's, yeah, I just want to.
That's absolutely true, Dean, because we've got that tie-in today.
Yeah,
right? We've absolutely got that.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Dean. Any other comments, questions? If not, that's a small story that I want to tell. So when Sashi and I was working on this spy test infrastructure together last week, we have 5 test cases passes, and we noticed the one thing that in one of the test cases that in the cleanup scripts, in the cleanup phase, it's actually was causing an occasion to crash. And so we were talking there, and we were like, okay, it's a great opportunity for us to actually showcase what we mean by shifting to the left. And what we could do we discussed, brainstorm this idea that Sash will go back and capture at the cleanup stage of that particular test case, and what the script did in that phase, and create a test case to reproduce the issue. And of course, and then Sashi will be adding the infrastructure to say that all these test cases must fail because blah blah reason. And then with that, then the next change Sashi is going to make is actually fix it. Oh, probably not Sashi, because this looks like an image issue to me. So somehow, somewhere, we need to add this fix somewhere. And then with that, when the fix is in, then we flip this test case to must pass, and we'll showcase about that, hopefully in the near future.
And just one more thing I wanted to add is that obviously Broadcom continues to contribute features to SONiC, and it is our intention going forwards to accompany each feature with a set of spy tests to validate that and verify that feature. And so look out for that. So task number 1 is to get the infrastructure in place in the community, and then as we bring more features into SONiC, each one will come with a set of spy tests, which will allow it to go through automatic validation in the community builds.
Thanks, Ben. That's a great idea. That's great effort. I think that's awesome. One suggestion, if I may make, is that if those test cases can be designed and written at the design and requirement phase, and check them in with the requirement design first, and mark them as must fail due to lack of feature. And as feature code comes in maybe multiple commits, we mark off some of the test cases to be must pass, so that we always have the test before we even have the code.
Right, so that's probably not the ordering we're going to use for the next set of contributions, but yeah, we can certainly look at that going forwards. I see what you're saying.
We certainly get the point, right? The point is get those test cases as soon as possible, right? And I think that will take time to get there and actually get ahead of the development pieces on it.
Yes, but that's a practice that we eventually want to move everyone towards. So we have test case before the feature is done.
Now, what we can do certainly is we very early on write what the test cases are going to be, right? So we know how we're going to validate it. We just tend to write them in lockstep with development actually coming up with the features and the CLIs and all that kind of stuff.
Understood. Yeah, those things definitely needs the touch up from time to time. Yes.
Yep.
Ying, so this is great actually. So how can we share this one? So do we need to schedule, or like how multiple people can use this framework? So to run it in terms of
Are you talking about
Yeah,
how
it's
the
kind of a
community
share.
member?
Yeah, that's true, Shasti.
On the same testbed?
Yeah.
Okay.
So are you asking about like how does the community uses the testbed that is there in the Microsoft for running test cases? Is that the question, or is that question is how do I run that locally within the community members testbeds?
Yeah, two folds actually. Let's say the one thing is, let's say you and me wanted to run the test. I mean, you wanted to share the setup, right? So, so is there like we need to have a queue kind of stuff, like where I mean, we need to run tests parallelly? Is it possible? Or the other thing is like how to access the setups. That is different story.
Yeah, I think we need some thought process or we need discussions on that topic, and I'll be more than happy to have calls separate on that topic.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point, Madhu. But you know, the philosophy here really is that there's not going to be just one of these test beds in the world. We're going to be replicating them, and obviously we'll have a test bed that is filled with different Broadcom equipment. I'm sure Mellanox and Intel and Ovium would want to do similar with their stuff. So I think we want to get away from this model that the Microsoft one or the Azure one is the only one in the world. We want to kind of step and repeat that to other test beds as well.
Yeah, I think even for ourselves, right, we're actually replicating a test bed in different sites because what we found is even within Microsoft, sharing the test bed between folks can be challenging if they have competing priorities, right? So I think that the second one that people mentioned about sharing the test bed setup so that everybody knows how to replicate that, that's probably the first thing we should try for. And it's probably easier.
Yeah, it's obviously not easier, but I think we need
scheduling problem becomes easier.
Yeah,
but
we need to try. We need to definitely try for it, and I'm sure we'll have more discussions on that.
Yeah, I think we already made some first steps towards that goal. For example, definition of those PTF spy test and SONiC manual spy test dockers. That is meant to give everyone a expectable and common environment to start, a common start point for everyone. And with those things, we still some pieces are missing, that the deployment scripts and the test setup and the test instructions, all those things will come over time. We have no intention of hiding those things behind the scenes so that only Microsoft or Broadcom can run those tests. Yeah, so we will share, definitely. It's open source community. Anyone has more questions, comments?
Yeah, I have one more comment here. So yeah, let's say now it is very good, right? So now we have so how do you contribute, right? So is there any kind of a cheat sheet, like how to write a test case, or how to have what are the steps? So
we'll get there, Madhu, one step at a time. But you're right, that will be needed.
Yeah. So.
But I think in the first instance, it's going to be a case of looking at the existing code and try and copy that. But yeah, but you're right. There is an education cycle here that we'll also have to figure out.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Zhenghui from Juniper. Just following Madhu's question, are we going to mandate developers for SONiC features to write their test cases before they can commit?
I think that will be a hard requirement in the future down the road.
Okay, thanks.
After all, so you want to be confident that your feature is working as expected, right? So as a developer, I think the most important thing if I'm working on a feature, the most important thing is that I know how this feature is going to work, And I know with a high confidence that once I check in my code, the feature is going to work as expected. I don't know a different way of achieving that without having test cases to support my expectations.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that absolutely needs to be the goal. At some point that we all agree upon that it becomes absolutely mandatory that all new code contributions are accompanied with tests. We do need to get there.
So that means the community already unified to this platform for testing, and with contribution of the code, we have to write our test cases and pass those test cases before we commit, right?
Yeah, except that we're not mandating that people use spy test. You can still use, if you want to. There's other mechanisms that pre-exist.
Yeah,
we would like them to use spy test, but they don't have to.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if we develop new features, not existing test cases are covering that.
I think if it's a new feature, certainly we expect some tests, right, to cover that. As Ben said, that this is the current framework, right, and we're trying to align everybody there, because there's a lot of benefits of a unified testbed. But that just like side, right, things can evolve, and there's going to be new contribution in the testbed framework design as well. So I think that is can get better over time.
Exactly. So to be honest, as a developer, you know best how to test your code, right? So there are multiple ways of testing the piece of code. You can do unit tests. You can write integration test cases like this. So whichever best suitable for your code, you probably know best. So as long as you have test cases to support your feature or change, that's the most important thing. There's multiple ways of skin a cat, right?
No, but the community need to verify the features work across all the platforms, right? There should be a stamp by community on this, and that has to be coming from a unified official test suite.
I think that's I mean, probably the thing that everybody wants to push for, given how many people are actually putting SONiC in production, right? So and with some strong verification. I'm not sure if the community have reached that point to see that we can come out with a certificate that this thing is going to run in everybody's platform, in everybody's operational scenario yet. I think that's quite a bit of work. I think we have to do it step by step.
Yeah, understood.
I agree. Thanks. Yeah, let me chime in. I would like to decouple certificate and this public plan, test plan, like program. Certificate actually involve a little bit more on the legal side, responsibility, and also how to build a test bed, and as well as in charge of like different hardware vendors. So let's move fast on the test suite side. So to enable that, we have enriched test suite, able to run on the validate all the new features and all features checked in. Let's make this as our first target. Yeah.
Thanks, Lipa. Thanks, Xin. Is there any comments, questions? If not, we can give 3-4 minutes more back to everyone. We can reconvene around 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
So, okay, let me call out this. We will let the recording continue running. That OCP will be able to trim the launch part. So let's not to disable it. Let's not stop the recording. Just leave it going.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. But everyone mute yourself, please.
Yeah. And I also like urge the organizer, please don't accidentally exit. Yeah. So this meeting will continue. Yeah. Okay. So let's get back on at 12:55. Yeah. The meeting will start at 1 o'clock sharp.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Meg, do you mind put up the headsets instead of mine?
What's that? Sorry.
Put up the agenda slides, please.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.